The crossover between politics and entertainment media has been something that's been around since the beginning. But over the last 15 or so years, we've seen a lot of negative impacts in the entertainment space that have been sparking up a lot of conversation. And most of it is very biased or politically charged. So my goal is to try and approach this as objective as possible, but that's obviously going to be pretty difficult because entertainment itself is subjective. So please bear with me here and have some patience because I don't normally make these kinds of videos. But I'm really passionate about this movie I just saw, and it made me happy for the future of movies in general. That said, if I get anything wrong, or if I forget to mention anything, please let me know in the comments, and maybe we can open up a healthy discussion. But yeah, let's keep it friendly. Not just towards me, towards each other too. Now for the Alien franchise, a strong female lead is nothing new. In fact, the main character of almost every Alien property is a woman, along with a male lead who's usually a robot. But for some reason, people like to forget about this, especially when it comes to the perception of women as a whole in Hollywood, but more specifically, in the action and sci-fi space. So in recent years, the negative impacts that I referred to earlier could easily be summed up and attributed to one admittedly stupid and kind of lame buzzword: woke. Now I'm not going to focus on this because every wannabe movie analyst cries about the woke mob in Hollywood and how they've perverted all of their favorite IPs, but to me that word is just kind of goofy and using it unironically is kind of cringe. But that's not to say I disagree with some of them. The main reason I don't like that term is because it's broad and it's unspecific. What most people are really complaining about when they use woke in this context is people virtue signaling or using some kind of agenda from their political side, which is usually the left, because Hollywood is dominantly left, to gain attention for the movie and spark conversation about it, instead of just making a movie that's worth talking about. And here's what's so interesting about that conversation as a whole. Because now it's just a bunch of sanctimonious people talking down to each other like they're morally superior. But the thing is that both sides have a point. They just don't have it all right. One of the main examples of this in current movies and TV is the push for black and female leads in movies, which I think everyone can universally agree is a good thing and a step in the right direction, especially considering how things were in America even 50 years ago. But while this is a good thing, what we end up seeing in a lot of properties nowadays, and especially revived properties, is recastings or race or gender swappings of characters that people have already come to know and love. A very specific and on-the-nose example that almost everyone agreed was really bad was that Velma show. Do I think it's bad that they race swapped some of the characters? Well, yeah, I do. Do I have anything against those races that they were swapped to? No. If they changed them to any other race, I'm Mexican and Italian, but if Shaggy came out and he was like, "Hey, yo, where's my Scooby snacks over here?" I'd be like, what the f***? And it's honestly crazy to me that the first instinct for people is, oh, you must be racist if you don't like a race swap. And I think that's just stupid, because that's not really the argument at all, and it doesn't even really help their cause. Now, what would have helped your cause is if you created some other characters that didn't need to piggyback off the reputation and goodwill established by already existing IP. If you just made strong independent characters of new races that were still connected to the old characters or the old universe, like another mystery gang that is friends or competing with the original group, then that would have made for strong characters of the race or gender you're trying to bring up, instead of just using them as a gimmick. And that's what's so frustrating about it to me, is that not only is quote-unquote woke Hollywood forcing all this down our throat in a really ham-fisted and just not good way, then calling us racist for not liking it, but on top of that, they're making a gimmick out of minorities and using them to make money. They are literally using minorities as a marketing tool, and I think everyone on both sides should be just as mad about that. And since we're on the topic of Indian representation, specifically with Velma, let's take a recent example from Hollywood that did this correctly, with the movie Monkey Man. Now, Monkey Man was such an awesome movie to me because I never see Indian people in Western media really get the attention and love that they deserve. And I rarely ever see them in action movie roles where they're just badass. I think there's a lot of stereotypes that Western culture has towards Indian people, and it's been universally accepted to just be racist to them because their culture is so different than ours. And I don't really think that's okay. And granted, I think it's okay to make jokes, But at the end of the day, you have to understand that everyone's really ultimately the same with a few minor differences. But this movie doesn't exist just for Indian representation. It doesn't just exist as a vessel to shove Indian culture down Americans' throats. It exists because it's a passion project from an Indian man. And he wanted to show a side of Indian culture that most Americans never really get to see, for better and for worse, which I thought was awesome, because the project itself was awesome. And this is what it ultimately boils down to. People hating on this woke movement in Hollywood just want to see good movies. Then the people on the quote-unquote woke side want to see more representation of minorities in Hollywood, but should definitely be mad about being objectified and used as a literal marketing ploy. So now circling back to Alien, and why I think Alien Romulus is so great and doing something that really nobody's talking about. The two main characters of this movie with the most screen time and the most praise across literally every review I've read is a woman and a black man. And they were fantastic. And over the next few years, I'm pretty sure everyone's gonna start knowing the names Kaylee Spaney, not sure if I said it right, and David Johnson, because they nailed it. They knocked it out of the park. But circling back to what I was saying earlier, this movie was a movie on its own. The race of the characters could have been anyone. It didn't matter. Granted, with the history of the franchise, it was always going to be a female lead, but neither of them being present in the movie was a selling point. The movie itself was. And of course, I could get into the subtext of people being racist to David Johnson's character because he was a synth, because people in the universe mistreat synths, but none of that felt forced or preachy, and worked into the narrative to help drive the plot. But this is a video about the female lead specifically. I don't want to get pulled any further off course. And that's what's so funny to me looking back at the She-Hulk Deadpool controversy. Because a bunch of She-Hulk fans were trying to make it seem like the reason people didn't like the show, but did like Deadpool, was because She-Hulk was about a woman. And I will concede and say, yeah, the comic book space and the sci-fi space are both male dominated. So with that, there's definitely going to be some real misogynists. But that's not a majority, and that does not account for everyone. And quite frankly, if something's good, they really wouldn't have a leg to stand on in criticizing it for that alone. And the reason I know that is because Alien Romulus is really good, and it isn't getting criticized for that. I don't think I've seen one negative review where somebody said, this movie sucks because it's a woman, or this movie's woke because the woman's holding the gun and she looks all badass and it should be a dude. The dude should be more badass. I think I did see one review where they said they wish the guy was more badass, but it was written like it was written by a 14-year-old. But that was one out of like hundreds. So to me, I think this movie has revealed that people don't really care about that. And what people do care about is being preached to or talked down to because they don't like something that's being used as a gimmick in lieu of actual good storytelling and good universe building. And it's unfortunate because it creates a situation that just really looks bad, of where people will see a female lead or a black lead and just groan in exhaustion because in their minds they're just thinking, oh, here we go again. And then they shoot something down before they even give it a chance, which is the opposite effect that they were going for by casting them in the first place. So what I'm ultimately hoping will happen as a result of this movie is that people will wake up. Get it? Wake. But hopefully, with this, people will open their eyes and see that it was never about women, and it was never about any minorities. It's about hitting beats to make a movie or TV show good, then casting the people to represent them. And not just because the color of their skin, or the country their family came from, or their gender, but because it makes sense with the character, and because that actor deserves it because they're talented. And granted, I'd be living in La La Land to tell you there's no racist or misogynists out there that aren't gonna complain, because they still will. But the point is that if Hollywood starts making good media again, people will complain less and less, and everyone would unite against those people, because if something's good, people are gonna defend it. So in summary, I don't think woke movies are bad because they're woke. And honestly, at this point, it's just a buzzword so people don't have to explain themselves, but it's starting to get misused because people use it so frivolously and it has such a wide variety of meanings. What people really hate are bad movies that use quote-unquote woke ideals to prop them up. And Alien Romulus succeeded in a lot of ways in satisfying both sides, which proves there is a happy middle ground and that we all agree on what we really want, and that we should demand better final products from these studios. Now, sorry I didn't focus on Alien too much, but it was more the idea that Alien pushed. So, if you haven't seen that movie yet, go and see it. I watched it a couple days ago, and then 2 hours after it, I couldn't help myself, and I went back to the theater and watched it again. Granted, I'm biased because I love the director, and I love these kinds of movies, but it was really enjoyable, and it was an incredibly thrilling experience. So you should definitely go see it, and hopefully, in the future, we can see more badass female leads like Kaylee Spain. But yeah, like I said, this isn't my normal type of video, but if it gets a good amount of likes, then maybe I'll start doing some more stuff like this. I just saw this movie and I had some thoughts about it that I wanted to share. If you like this video or you like gaming content, please subscribe and stick around. And if you made it this far, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a good rest of your day.